How do I use this energy exchange and my intuition to spot the things that are draining me dry and to let them go, push them off the branches, get them out of my life, thank them for their purpose and their service, but then get out of here because you need to make room for something new and better and energizing. Doesn't that sound good? Yeah, you better believe it sounds good. So let's do it. And one of the reasons why I want you to really focus on energy is because your energy doesn't lie. I mean, just for a second with me, just take a second. Whether you're out there walking the dog, or you're driving around in your car, or you're working from home, or you're busy doing a bunch of stuff, I want you to just stop for a second. And I want you to assess right now, what's your energy level? Think about a fuel gauge in a car, empty to full. Empty in a human being means you feel depleted, you feel burnt out, you feel checked out, you feel like your whole life is basically pouring energy into everything else. Full in a human being basically means that you're energized, you're excited. You feel like the things that you're pouring yourself into, your habits, your routine, the people you're surrounded with, the projects you're working on, it may be difficult, but it's bringing energy back into your life too. Your energy never lies. We are energetic human beings. And I know that sounds woo-woo. We can get into the neuroscience on that on a totally different episode, but let me prove it to you. Have you ever walked into, say, a coffee shop and the person that is behind the counter is having the world's worst day? They are super grumpy. It doesn't matter how big your smile is. It doesn't matter how nice you are. They are like, that energy actually impacts you, just like your positive energy can impact somebody else. Energy is contagious, and most importantly, when you hang out with your friend Mel Robbins, I'm going to teach you to start to pay attention to it, and I'm going to teach you to trust it, because energy is also tied to intuition. And we're going to get into this tool of how do you assess, is something giving me positive energy? Is something giving me negative energy? Is this a relationship that is one way, or is this something that gives me something in return? That is the tool we're going to talk about today. And what if the very next morning you walk into the coffee shop and you're having a bad day? Like one of your pets is really sick and it just is really bumming you out and you're feeling really low. And the person behind the counter is just the nicest person on the planet. And they look you in the eyes and they give you a big smile and they are really cheery and they compliment you. And they maybe even ask you, hey, how you doing? You're like, I'm not doing so great. Oh, I'm really sorry. Coffee's on me. How do you feel? You feel better because they poured their positive energy into you and that lifted you up. Energy is contagious. It also always tells the truth. It's like a compass. In fact, a compass runs on magnetic energy. That's why a compass always points true north. It never lies. Your energy doesn't lie either. It's why you feel kind of off around certain people. It's why if somebody texts you and you don't like them, you're like, ugh. But if you like the person, you're like, oh, yeah, cool. Energy never lies. So let's talk about how we're going to use it, okay? So I'm going to break the topic of letting go into two different types of situations. And in each one, I'm going to explain how to use energy and paying attention to the energy inside you, both that you're giving, that you're feeling, and that you're receiving back in order to know when it's time to let go. So situation number one is super easy. And this is typically when it has to do with things or projects or a job or somebody who's like really, really engaging in toxic behavior. Okay? This is the easy stuff. This is when you have a flood of negativity around something. And I'm going to give you a bunch of examples of this, okay? So we all have a pair of pants that we're holding on to from high school or before we were pregnant or whenever that we can't freaking fit into. When you stare at those things, you're reminded that you can't fit in them. When you try to wiggle them on, especially after a shower, you feel terrible about yourself. That is something that is an example. You need to let go of that. That job that you walk into where there is a pit in your stomach and you gripe about it to your friends and you spend all this energy pouring into why you hate it and resisting, you need to find another job. That friend that does nothing but gossip and roll their eyes and drag you down and literally is such a bad influence on you, you need to let them go. And what does that mean? Well, that depends on you. Donate the pants for sure. Start redirecting your energy from complaining about your job to directing energy to looking for a new one. I mean, just imagine. That's the other thing about this. Do you know how much energy and time and effort you waste focusing on resistance and complaining? If you were to just stop complaining for a day about something that gives you negative energy, like your job or your parents or your boyfriend or your girlfriend or your roommates, what if you stopped complaining? Because that's negative energy pouring out, and you directed that same effort towards something positive, like fixing it or letting it go and creating something new that makes you feel good. Like, I relate to that because I think I've spent a lot of my life pouring negative energy at things that I didn't really like, instead of realizing I needed to complete this. I needed to let this go. The roommate served a purpose 2 years ago. Not a fit right now, and that's okay. Time to kick the leaves off the branches. You know what I'm saying? Time to save myself instead of pouring everything into either another person or my energy into being upset and frustrated and disappointed. So when you have things that are for sure 100% zapping your energy, or you find yourself complaining, griping, resisting, let go. And you can do that in two ways. Obviously, donate, throw out, delete is one. The other one is take all that negative resistance that you feel in you that churns and pour it into something positive. If you can't quit your job, for example, because you need to pay the bills, no problem. Instead of complaining, instead of feeling resistance, spend 30 minutes every morning before you go to work looking for a new one. Or spend 30 minutes every morning pouring positive energy into a hobby or a project or a side hustle that brings you positive energy. And when you start to do that, you start to lift yourself up because you are now getting this reciprocal exchange by pouring energy and attention into something new and something positive. And that's going to lift you up. And by the way, that will also change your experience of that current job that you hate. I know this because I've done it. I remember being right out of, let's see, how old was I? I was 30 years old. I was pregnant with our daughter, who's now 23. And we had moved to Boston from New York City, where I had been a public defender. And I loved that job working for legal aid. And so we moved to Boston. I do not have a license to practice in Massachusetts, so I could not work for the public defender's office. I have to take the bar, but I've got bills to pay. So I get a job in this huge law firm. And working in a law firm is the exact opposite of being a public defender. When I worked in New York City for legal aid, I was in court 5 days a week from 8 o'clock in the morning till 5 o'clock in the afternoon. That was my job. I was on my feet. I was, negotiating plea deals. I was talking to witnesses and police officers and judges and like that, going to clients, going to Rikers, all of it. When you get a job in a large law firm, you literally go into a high rise and sit in an office and write all day. It was the exact opposite of what I am wired to do. I knew the moment I got that job that I was going to hate it. And for a year, I would get on the commuter rail and I would commute in for 45 minutes, and then I would get off the commuter rail and I would clomp over to the building, and then I would get in the elevator, and then I would take the elevator up to like whatever, the 23rd floor, and then I'd clomp. I'd go into my office and shut the door. And from the moment I woke up every morning, I felt depleted. The closer I got to that office as that train clunk, 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 clunk down the tracks towards Boston, the more resistance I felt. I got nothing in return from that job. Yes, I got a paycheck and I needed it, so it served a purpose, but I was getting nothing of value back. Because when I looked at the partners in the law firm, I knew damn well that's not the life I wanted. I knew that this was not a fit for me. But I'll tell you, I made the mistake that everybody makes. Instead of recognizing that that's how I felt, instead of channeling all of that angst and resistance and into looking for something else, I sat there miserable and I felt depleted and I felt awful. And I'm going to confess this to you. I didn't even take the advice then. You know what happened to me? I got pregnant and I had a baby and I went on maternity leave. And when I was on maternity leave, that's when, with distance from it, I was like, okay, there is no way I'm going back there. No way. Now that I have escaped, there is no way I'm going back. And we've all had exes like that, right? Where you're like in it for so long, you finally let it go and break off. And they're like, what the hell was I thinking? Now that I'm on the other side and I'm away from that like energy suck, I don't want to go back to the like energy sucker vampire thing. What the hell? But when you're in it, that negativity vortex can keep you spinning and stuck. You convince yourself, but I need the money, but I can't do this, but and then you're so depleted from your complaining and the outpouring of energy in the wrong thing that you're just stuck. That was me. So I get pregnant. I go on maternity leave. Holy cow, I am free from the vortex of negativity. I've been let go, but now I got to go back. And so my husband, Chris, says to me, look, I know you don't want to go back, but here's the problem, Mel. We have a mortgage and we have a baby. And you will go crazy being home. And so here's the thing. You need to find a job. Your maternity leave ends in exactly 3 months. So that means you have 12 weeks to find a job. And you have to make $60,000 a year. That's it. And you know what's interesting? If you give a human being a problem to solve, we get pretty creative. And I'll tell you what, the night before my maternity leave, I not only landed a job, it wasn't for 60 grand, it was for 55, but that was enough. And I walked in the next day and I let go. I what do you say? I guess I quit, but you know, they didn't let me go. I quit. But so what I'm trying to say is do not make the mistake that 30-year-old Mel Robbins made. Do not do that to yourself. Do not waste a year of your life spinning in that negativity energy vortex. Your body knows. Your spirit knows. Get rid of those pants. Push that project to the side that you don't feel inspired to work on anymore. Let it go because it is sucking your vitality dry. And I want to just remind you that we're talking about reciprocal energy exchange. That's why these situations of the pants that don't fit and the friend that's engaging in toxic behavior or the job that sucks your soul dry, there is nothing that you're getting in return. Nothing. In fact, what you're getting in return is more negativity. Those jeans in your closet make you feel bad about yourself. It's bringing you negative energy. That job that you're complaining about, that you go to day to day, convincing yourself you can't leave, you can't find some la-da-da-da-da-da-da, it's bringing negative energy into your life. And so these situations are super easy to spot because there's no reciprocal value to the relationship or the pants or the project, period. Now what I want to talk about is the more complicated situations. Those situations where it's not clear, where you feel guilty, where maybe you're taking care of an aging parent or a child that's struggling with mental health stuff, and it is depleting as hell. Or maybe you are really struggling with friendship or in relationships because you have old patterns of behavior that you don't realize are interfering with this free-flowing reciprocal give and take that really brings amazing things into your life. So when we come back, that's what we're going to talk about. Because this notion that I'm teaching you of letting go and energy, it's not complicated at all. But life doesn't work that way. Life can get really complicated. And so when we come back, that's what we're going to dig into next. There are 2 rules that I want you to start practicing right now because these are the 2 big energy drainers, okay? And you can start today. Energy drainer number 1. Anytime you're complaining, That's right. Complaining to yourself is a complete energy drain, period. We were heading here to the studio. There was a ton of traffic. We were running late. I could feel the negative wave of stress coming. I could feel the depletion coming. I could feel it all happening. I could feel the thoughts starting to go. That is when you are sucking your own energy dry. I started complaining. Should have got up earlier. Should have done this. Stop complaining. Stop complaining about that job you don't like. Stop complaining about the traffic. Stop complaining about your partner. Stop complaining about your weight. Stop complaining about the things in your life. Because here's the truth. With a little bit of effort and a little better attitude and a little positive energy, you can freaking change anything. Because you can take the actions that change anything. And so instead of bitching about the job, get busy tomorrow morning and start looking for a new one. Instead of complaining that you don't have any friends, spend some time putting yourself in activities where you're going to meet new people. This is so important. Anywhere in your life where you are complaining, you are your own energy drain because you are pouring negative energy at something instead of redirecting that same effort and attitude and just into something positive. So that's rule number 1. No complaining. I dare you, try to go 24 hours and not complain about anything today. It's next to impossible. I would love to hear from you if you take this challenge on. Seriously, I would. Just tag me on social media. Tell me how the 24-hour rule is going of no complaining. Rule number 2, stop trying to control other people. Stop it. I was at an event in Las Vegas with my friend, not Las Vegas. I was at an event in Los Angeles with my friend Kathy Heller. And we took a bunch of questions from the audience. And this particular question from one woman, I can't stop thinking about. How do you stop controlling your friends? You stop. That's how you do it. When you catch yourself trying to control someone, and then you let go of the desire to change them, and you redirect all of that angst and energy toward caring, listening, supporting, creating this reciprocal exchange of allowing them to show up exactly as they are, you get connection back. Your attempt to control somebody blocks connection. It blocks the exchange between people. And here's one more thing about letting go when it comes to relationships. Maybe, sometimes, the purpose that some people play in your life is simply to teach you how to let go. Let's go back to the top of Haystack Mountain in southern Vermont because our friend Mel Robbins, she has huffed and she has puffed and step by step, she has made it to the top of Haystack Mountain. And there's something interesting about that. It's an example of how putting in the effort, throwing in the energy, and doing things that may be hard. They may be a struggle. They may make you pant and turn bright red in the face. They may make you feel like maybe you can't do this. That's good. That is so good. Because when you push yourself to do something out of your comfort zone, that is positive. And what do you get back? You get back all kinds of positive energy in return. You feel pride. You feel happy. You grow a little bit. You get a great view. And speaking of view, Mel has something that she wants to say to you to wrap this up. The other amazing thing about hiking and being out here in the woods and climbing on top of a mountain is that once you actually get to the top, your whole brain distorts how painful it was to cross the bridge, hike the trail, and go step by step to get where you wanted to go. But it just goes to show you, with just a little bit of consistent effort and an optimistic attitude, inch by inch, step by step, you can make anything happen. I promise 3 tools. Tool number 1 is a framework. You're starting to realize Mel Robbins, she loves her frameworks, and here's why. I think advice is boring and intellectual. And so I like to have metaphors and frameworks because it helps me to truly, make it stick. So here's one of my favorite frameworks for friendship. You've probably heard it. There are 3 types of friendships, and this helps you be really flexible in your friendships. It also helps you to remind yourself of the truth, okay? So here are the 3 types of friendships. You ready? And this framework is, there are friends for a reason, there are friends for a season, and there are friends for a lifetime. That's it. And if you think about people coming and going in and out of your friendship zone in a flexible way, because they're either there for a reason, or they're there for a season, or they're there for a lifetime, you now no longer are gripping. You can be flexible. You can assume people like you. You can stop holding on to the wrong people and trying to force somebody who's just there for a reason to try to be a lifetime friend. This is such a helpful framework. Let me explain it. So these people are in your life for a reason. These would be work friends. You see them all the time because you work together. They might be the parents of other kids that are on your kids' sports team, or they might be people that are on your team, right? That you're playing sports with. They're there for a reason. They might be your neighbors. They're there for a reason. These are great friends to have. They're there for a certain period of time. They're there to teach you something. They're there to support you on a leg of the journey called life. These are awesome friends. But don't grip onto them. Be flexible with them. Let them come in and out of your life. Love them up. Enjoy them while they're there with you. And then at some point, when you no longer have that reason to have those friends in your life, they sort of fade a little bit. They're still your friends. I guarantee you 10 years later, if you were good friends with your neighbor, they would certainly help you out. So would your friends at work. This is why flexible friendship is such an awesome concept. Now let's talk about a season. So these are folks that are there typically a little bit longer. They're there for a chapter, a season. So they might be the people that you met in college. And you were really, really close friends during college. And you were really, maybe you roomed together after college. But then people start peeling off. They start heading in different directions. They maybe move away to different cities or they get married. And so these are close friends for a certain season of your life. And, I find that I had a lot of really good friends that I was friends with when I was a young mom. That was a really amazing season in my life. I will cherish that season of my life. I had so many close female friends because we were all doing life in the same season at the same time. And when that season ended and my kids went to middle school and then they scattered even further in high school, and then all of a sudden the bomb drops on everything when they go off to college, and you don't, like, that season of my life was over. In fact, it had been over for a long time. And so seasons are a beautiful thing. And I'm in a new season of my life. I'm beginning a new season here in Southern Vermont, and I bet you're beginning a new season. So many of us had a reckoning with ourselves about what really mattered during COVID. And it's why so many of you made major changes like my husband and I did. And it's why those of you that haven't are probably thinking about major changes, because you haven't truly accepted the things that you were processing around COVID and the changes that you would like to make. And so friends for a season are amazing, absolutely amazing. Just love them. And when the season changes, be flexible, because a new season is beginning, which means a new seasons of friends are going to emerge. And lifetime friends, those are those 4 a.m. friends we talked about. And remember, you're doing pretty dynamite if you can think of that one person that you could just pick up the phone at 4 o'clock in the morning and call. And you know that they would pick up and just chat with you just because you wanted to talk to a friend. So, tool number 1, use that framework to enforce this flexibility. Reason, season, and lifetime. Don't force people into the wrong category. This is a big one. Please stop being mad at people for not being who you want them to be right now. Sometimes some of the most generous and beautiful and loving things that you can do for people is to graciously let them go and let them grow and let them be who they need to be in this season of their lives. Now let's move on to tool number 2, which you are probably going to hate, and that is you need to take action. That's going to require you to step out of the comfort zone of your couch and the comfiness of a Friday night alone, binge watching TV, and push yourself to get out of your comfort zone and make the effort to make friends. And this effort part's really important. There was this enormous study done at the University of Kansas, and this was mind-blowing to me. And I found it to be, again, another very helpful framework, because I think, you're not a dummy and neither am I. I know that if I sit alone in my house, it's not like friends are going to come calling and I'm going to suddenly have strangers show up that are going to become my new friends in this season of my life. I know I need to get out of the house. You know you need to make the effort, but we're not. And frameworks and research help me go, oh, this actually is a big deal. Oh, if I do want to change this and I want to stop feeling so lonely and I want to stop swimming in the toilet of comparison and dislike and insecurity, I got to climb out of the toilet. That makes a lot of sense. But this research from University of Kansas kind of blew my mind because it puts friendship into a timeline, an hours perspective. Making friends, check this out. They studied how many hours it takes to make a quote friend. And this is fascinating. That as a student, it's very different than what it's like to make friends as an adult. This is why it can feel hard, because most of our lives, we were in seasons where we were forced to be in groups. Like, think about how you're in a group in elementary school and that's how you meet your friends. And then you're in a group in middle school and that's how you meet your friends. And then you're in a group in high school and that's how you meet your friends. And then you're in a group in college and that's how you meet your friends. And then all of a sudden your 20s hits and boom. Everybody scatters. And you're like, where the hell did my friends go? In fact, I did a interview with Alex Cooper, who hosts Call Her Daddy. The episode is called, Where Did All My Friends Go? And we focused on this phenomenon in your 20s where you feel like you don't have any friends anymore. And the reason why is because for the first 25 years of your life, your friendships were basically handed to you because you were in settings with large groups of people moving at the same pace through life together. And as soon as you graduate, you're on your own, baby. It's a whole big world out there. And if you think it's hard in your 20s, wait till your 30s, 40s, and 50s. And now you have the tools, so we don't need to freak you out. But this is normal. And we require effort. And this University of Kansas study explains this. So if you're in college and you're like swimming in the sea with all these people doing the same thing at the same time, it takes you about 43 hours to become an acquaintance with somebody. Now, you're sitting in class together. That's part of the time. You're eating in the cafeteria together. That's part of the time. You're hanging out in the dorm room together. That's part of the time. When you're an adult, to become a casual friend, it takes you 94 hours. Why? Because your patterns are very different when you're an adult. You don't have as much overlap. It's why you tend to become friends as an adult with people you work with because you spend more time with them. It's why you're friends with people that you live near because you spend time with them. This is not just common sense, it's researched. And in order to go from just a casual friend to a really good friend, if you're a student, it takes about 57 hours, which makes sense because you're spending more time together. So you're sharing more experiences together. For adults, we need about 164 hours. That's so sad. This is why it's so important for you to have this perspective and for you to understand it's going to require effort on your part, and that's okay. Knowing that everybody feels this way, knowing that everybody's at their homes alone under the fuzzy blanket on the couch, feeling like a peach that nobody likes, swimming in the toilet of comparison, feeling like friendship is so hard. Knowing that, I hope is helping you go, oh, well, maybe I could be the one. Maybe I could get all the peaches together and we could make a pie or some jam or some cobbler. That's what I did this weekend. I'm going to tell you a quick story because I think it's really important. So here I am. I always say, please come visit me. I live alone on a mountain in Vermont. I'm lonely. But the truth is, I've met a bunch of really cool people up here. And every one of us say the same thing. It's amazing living here. And I really want to meet some friends. I really want to get together with people. I want to stop saying, let's get together and not make plans. And so I'll tell you a quick story because all it takes is leaning toward your curiosity. That's all it takes. I walk this loop all the time. That's right by my house. It's a beautiful loop. It's about 4.5 miles. And I love flowers. I know there's 5 love languages. I have a 6th. Flowers, flowers, flowers. I'm like a psycho about flowers. They remind me of my parents. I love growing them. I love bringing them into the house. I just love flowers. And so this year, I've been walking this loop for 26 years. When I would visit my in-laws before we bought their house, and now it's our own. And all of a sudden this year, there was this insane flower farm that popped up. And by flower farm, I mean this patch of flowers, like an acre big. And in the spring, it was this row of gorgeous double peony tulips and French tulips and parrot tulips. And I would do this walk and I'd stop and I'd take photos, and you've probably seen them on my Instagram stories. And then as those came and went, then ranuncula came up, and it was this like triple petal ranunculus and peonies. And I'm like, oh, it's like flower porn for me. And then now there's these field of dahlias. Like dahlias are mind blowing, just gorgeous flowers. And there was never anybody there, ever. There was no sign, no nothing. And I became obsessed, you guys, with stopping by this flower patch. Just drawn to it like a moth to a flame. Oh my God, I just loved it. I would like Sound of Music with the flower patch, and I'm taking flowers, and now I feel like an influencer that's 20 years old, and I need a cowboy hat with a feather in it so that I can do the festival photos that everybody does. And I just flower porn all day long. And all of a sudden I see a truck parked there one day. And the truck, thankfully, had a contractor's label on it. And lo and behold, that same label was on a truck here at our house because we're under construction. So I walked over to the and I'm like, hey, do you know this flower field? And he goes, yeah, I park my car there every once in a while. I'm like, do you know who the person is? He's like, yeah, that's Annette from Fleur Farm. I'm like, what? And I think she's on Instagram. I'm like, what? So I DM her. Oh my God, I've seen the flower. Blah, blah, blah. And then she DMs back. Oh my gosh, really? It's a labor of love. It's a hobby. A hobby? Yeah, I work full time. And I've been really worried about like how I'm going to get all the dahlia bulbs out. And I'm like, well, I'll help you. You'll help me? And so next thing you know, just by following the energy, following the connection, leaning into this season of my life, leaning into the curiosity, I DM her. She DMs back. I come to find out that she has been planting flowers in this new season of her life. She sells bulbs online. She is going through some stuff personally. And I'm like, well, I know some other women. I'll get these other women that I know to come and hang out with us. And I'll see if we can't like make something happen. And so we get 13 women to show up at the flower field on Saturday. I didn't know any of these women. And I knew some of them. I knew the ones that I invited. And then the friends that I invited invite other friends. And it was this army of new women here in southern Vermont that showed up to help another woman dig dahlias out of a field on a Saturday. And she and I have been texting ever since. So I met all these new people. We connected over something we're interested in. We now have a group chat called the Dynamite Dahlia Dames. And so Annette and I are texting. Wait to hear this. When we both showed up, she said to everybody, I'm so overwhelmed because I'm so alone and introverted. I never think anybody would help. I have trouble asking for help. And so as we're texting, she writes, I'm so grateful for everyone's kindness and presence and the joy there was in the field this morning. It's been a hard and a lonely path thus far, building a vision shovel by shovel, digging my way to a new life. Boy, I relate to that. I really relate to that. And then suddenly, out come all these fabulous women. Yes, I'm very, very happy because that morning was my highlight of my week too. So the challenge now is leaning in again and setting a date again and moving the ball down the field. Because as we know from that University of Kansas study, that it takes time and it takes effort. And we all need each other to be making the effort. And so the final tool that I'm going to give you is something that is so simple and so impactful. And I have so many friends that now do this that I'm stealing this from. And it's very simple. Every single day, make it a habit to text a friend. Just out of the blue. And if you want to amplify this, take a selfie video. Hey, I'm just on my walk and I was thinking of you. And hey, my dog says hello. And you not only underestimate how much people like you, you underestimate how much it means to somebody when they hear from you. This isn't just me. This is research that was covered in the New York Times recently about how receiving an unexpected text from a friend makes you immediately feel connected to that person, and it makes the friendship stronger. Make it a practice every single day as you start your day to reach out to one friend with a random message. In fact, I want to share one with you. So I love my friend Glo Antonimo, and she's an incredible author and podcaster and just puts out incredible content and motivational speaker, and I learned so much from her. And she is so great about this. I want you to listen to this random message that popped in my phone literally a month ago. There was her beautiful face just sending me a video message, and I'm going to play it for you because I want you to listen to it as if she's sending this to you.
Mel, hello. It has been almost a month since our last video message. And I was reading one of my daily devotional type books, and I thought of this, and I'm like, who can I send this to? And you came to my heart, so I'm going to read it out loud. You are human. You will make mistakes. Hopefully, you'll make a whole lot of them because that means you are trying. And trying means you are fully alive. It also makes life a hell of a lot more interesting. So here's to making more mistakes. Here's to living. And here's to appreciating the ebbs and flow of life. You know, it's hard for us to like maintain equilibrium. Like we try to go through life chasing and seeking comfort and just staying happy and staying positive. But sometimes in those moments and in those seasons and those valleys of depression or sadness, you know, we're meant to get something from that. And then when we come out of it, it's like we have so much more appreciation. So no need to respond. Just wanted to bless you with this message. Thinking of you, sending you love. High five.
That just like makes you feel good. And so here's what I want to tell you. I want to tell you, I love you. I believe in you. And I believe in your ability to stop telling yourself these lies and to really embrace the truth. The truth is you deserve amazing friendships. You need amazing friendships. And you are that amazing friend that somebody who is going through a very lonely season, digging their way to a new life, needs desperately right now. So 54321, as soon as we're done, I want you to text a friend of yours and level it up. Send a video and let's level it up again. Send them a link to this episode. Because the more that we get everybody reaching out and the more that we create this ripple effect, the more we are helping people get the things that they deserve and find the courage to take the actions that create it and make it a reality. That brings me to the 4 things, like the how. How do you not give a shit? And these are just 4 random things that I just tried to distill down because I want to give you a takeaway. This shows you a little behind the scenes. It allows me to show you more of my personality and have a fun way of having you meet Cameron, one of our producers, and Jesse, who runs video and production here for the podcast, and Christine, our COO and CFO, who did not want to be on camera. And I'm proud of just like, fuck it, I don't give a shit. I'm just going to jump on, even though this is out of my comfort zone. And Amy, who's, you know, one of our senior team members and producers here. But I'm like, I got to figure out like what's something you guys can grab onto. Okay. So the first one is rule number 1 for how to stop giving a shit about things that don't matter. Rule number 1, try giving a shit about everything and see how it feels. I'm dead serious about this. I know it sounds stupid, but why not worry about what shoes you're wearing? Worry about what everybody's thinking. Worry about what your boss is doing. Worry about what's going to happen next week. And then stop and ask yourself, is that working for you? Does it really work for you to lie in bed at night and worry about what your friends are doing? Does it really work for you to scroll through social media and worry about the weight you've gained or worried about this? Does it really work for you to obsess about what outfit you're going to put on 7 different times before you leave the house? Does it really work for you to worry about the fact that your makeup is running and you just... Drop the mask. Like, that's the point of this. Because if worrying about everything and giving a shit about all this stupid stuff actually worked, you'd be happier. You'd feel more secure. You'd have more time because you would work. But it doesn't work. It is so liberating when you realize that, my God, I'm robbing my own energy and my own focus and my own confidence by worrying about so much shit that doesn't matter. Stop it. Stop it. And if you can't stop it, I would just goose it, man. I would step on the accelerator and I would worry about every damn thing and then ask yourself, is this really helping me? Because it doesn't help you to put your hand on a hot stove. That's why you don't do it every day. That's rule number one. Rule number two, this kind of goes back to the stuff we talked about with CNN and kind of zooming out and visualizing who actually is criticizing people online. I mean, come on now. Let's show some empathy. So rule number two for me that has helped me really stop obsessing about what other people are thinking or other people's reactions is I've come to believe that almost everybody you meet is at about the emotional maturity of somewhere between 8 and 12. I think that's where most people get stuck. Most people's disappointment is an 8-year-old throwing a tantrum. Most people being mad at you is about as long as an 11-year-old is mad at you. And we conflate adults with adult maturity when it comes to their emotional reactions, and 99% of the population does not have it. And so if you can kind of imagine your boss as an 8-year-old, like I think about the guy that we were meeting with at Audible, great guy. I freaking love him. I hope we do a ton of business together. But I think about him as like a cool kid, you know, who's playing games and video games and super innovative and super smart. And it allows me to just relate to him on that human level instead of trying to do that gamesmanship and bad boss and I'm going to get the deal done. No. Think about everybody as between the emotional maturity of 8 to 12, and you'll worry a lot less about how they react. Now, rule number 3 is incredibly important, and I want to thank my team for helping me distill this down because I think this is super, super, super important. Rule number 3 is when it comes to not giving a shit, there is a time and a place for it, okay? And I'm going to take this even further. There is a time for really important standards and being rigid about following them, and a time to amplify your self-expression. And I'm going to give you a tool in just a minute for how you can really use this. In fact, no, I'm going to give you the tool now because I think it'll make more sense. Think about a seesaw, you know, that teeter-totter thing. It's a balance. And so in certain environments, like maybe when you go home, home still feels like the same operating procedures as when you were 8 years old. And so maybe you've been really putting more weight on the side of the way things have always been. And you've really not been giving a shit about your self-expression. The opportunity here is to see where in your life you have stopped being you. You have started giving a shit about things that don't align with your value, that suffocate you, that make you feel like you can't be you. That is not a place that you should be. Those are not relationships you should be in. But you got to think about this kind of like a seesaw. Where in your life are things out of balance and you're starting to give a shit and put weight into things that no longer align with you? And where can you bring things more into balance so that you can be yourself, you can be self-expressed, and you can do so without offending people around you, without you violating corporate HR policies? So we were talking a lot about open-toed shoes. And if I were walking into JP Morgan to close a massive, e-learning, corporate training deal, I probably would not have worn my Valentino espadrilles despite how much they cost. I probably would have worn something else, or at least I would have gotten a fucking manicure, okay? Why? Because there is a time and a place to be cavalier. Your job is a place to pay attention to standards. Why? Because they're paying you to do something. A job, I hope it's fun. I hope you're part of a culture and you have a sense of belonging and you feel appreciated. But the bottom line is you're there because you're getting paid to do something, which means you should care more about the standards and the culture and the operating procedures than you might in your day-to-day life. Why? Because you are making an exchange for money. But I have one giant caveat when it comes to talking about standards in the workplace, and I want to take this opportunity to have a conversation with you about it because it is incredibly important. It is very real, It's very real in work. It's very real in life in general. And it impacts people's ability to be fully, authentically their truest selves. See, there are a lot of standards, especially in the workplace, where discrimination and bias is very real and it impacts people's ability to be themselves. And as a white woman, I have the privilege of never having to deal with that. I'll give you an example. So I have a bunch of Black female friends who do not feel comfortable wearing their natural hair at work. And it's not just anecdotal. There is incredible research documenting this. So a recent study from Michigan State, for example, confirms that 80% of Black women feel that they need to switch their hairstyle in order to align with more conservative work standards. And a recent study from Duke has proven that Black women with natural hairstyles, like an afro or twists or braids, less likely to land a job interview than a white woman like me or a Black woman with straightened hair. I mean, that just makes me want to cry. And here I am talking about open-toed shoes, and Black women have to worry about their hair and being who they are. That is so shitty. And that's why I wanted to take an opportunity and why I think it's so important to call out this type of bias. And that's why I'm doing it right now. So I want to acknowledge that whether it's your gender identity or your religion or your race or your sexual orientation or a disability that you have, I want to acknowledge that how you manage this balance that I'm talking about between self-expression and being your authentic, full self and the very real bias and discrimination that exist in social and workplace norms, that is a deeply personal decision and balancing act that you got to make every single day. And it's easy for me to say, hey, hiding who you are is never okay, because it's true. I don't want you to ever hide who you are. But I just felt it was important that I acknowledge that it's easy to say, but it's not that easy to do. So let me kind of layer that into this rule number 3 that we're talking about, which is there's a time and a place for self-expression. It is up to you to decide what you value most in any situation. When you think about that seesaw between standards and societal or workplace norms versus your self-expression and you being you. But here's what I do know. I hope that you find the courage to choose your values and to choose being yourself as often as you can. And that brings me to the 4th rule. The 4th rule for how to learn how to give a shit about what matters and not care about what doesn't. The 4th rule is you go first. You go first. Every single human being that you encounter is trapped in some sort of rule they think they should be following. Everybody. And the rule, if you want to start giving a shit about what really matters, is you go first. You be the one that shows up with espadrilles. You be the one that says, I'll pull on that spacesuit and climb into that thing. You be the one that brings the fun. And what I've found over and over and over again, and I think, Christine, you'll be able to say, yep, it's true, is that by being willing to put the real me, especially the hideous me, the moments where I'm crying, the moments where my makeup is running, the moments where the dog has just barfed all over something, the moments where I've just left a gym class where I've pulled a calf muscle and I'm still panting and my eyes are bloodshot and my face is beet red, and I literally look at myself in the selfie and I say, how does Christopher Robbins wake up next to this every single morning with a smile on his face? Because you, woman, are ugly. And then I hit play. My willingness to do that, my willingness to go first, to drop the mask, the filter, to just put it out there, it's liberating for people. I mean, people come up to me more often when I look like shit. And I say, yeah, I'm happy to take a selfie. They're like, really? Like shocked that I would want to actually take a selfie looking like that. And then somebody perfectly made up, like, well, let me fix my hair. And I'm like, are you kidding? Look at me. I look like a labradoodle that just ran a marathon. I mean, give me a break. Get the selfie up here. Let's go. I'm going to make a kissy face because my jaw is frozen and it makes it look like I'm taking a shit when I try to smile. But what do you see, Christine? And the you go first.
And then you go first. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's something that really connects with people when they meet you, of just feeling like they're running into a friend that they, have seen from afar. And I think that there's something very special about that. And it's a true connection. And then something I would just add, as somebody who's known you for a long time, gosh, 18 years at this point, of you have always been exactly the same person. And so it's weird that when we run into people and people are super excited to see you just because I've known you for so long, but that it's a sincere connection for sure. And the other thing I would say is that I've never known you to make a negative comment about anyone else's appearance, how anyone else is dressed. Like, you're not, I don't think that's something that you process or are connected to. And I think it's because you freed yourself of those constraints that I don't even know that it's something that you notice. And I think that's quite admirable. And I think that's also something to share, of like, once you stop caring about those things, you'll stop paying attention to them in other people too. And it makes it better for everyone.
That's a huge, profound point, because I've heard other people, Christine, make this point where they go, when other people judge you, it's about them, it's not about you. But I think you just illustrated why. Because I don't ever critically judge what anybody else looks like or what they're wearing, because you're right, I don't judge myself for what I'm wearing. I mean, I can laugh at myself. I have humanity and humor about it, but I'm not actually very critical of myself. And I think if you can eradicate that in yourself, it's true. You don't actually criticize other people. It does begin with how you treat yourself. And this also then reinforces what I'm saying about empathy. All those people that you're trying to be friends with, that are competitive, or they're like the high-end group, or they're the fancy people, and you feel that criticism, they're deeply critical of themselves. And that's the circle that you're chasing. Like, you got to get right with you. And it's an interesting topic, how to not give a shit about, stuff, because it sounds like a throwaway topic. But I think at the core of a great life, it's really one of the most important skills that you can actually learn, because what you're doing is you're really giving a shit about your values, and you're putting your attention and your mindset and your effort toward what you value, and you're spending less and less time and energy on things that you don't. I love that famous Nipsey Hussle quote. If you look at the people in your circle and you don't get inspired, then you don't have a circle, you have a cage. And I'm going to add to that quote. If you look at the people in your circle and you can't be yourself, then you don't have a circle. You are in a cage. And you got to be very careful about this, because here's what I've realized over and over and over again in my own life. It's that my own behavior and my insecurities are almost always what put me and keep me in that cage. And that brings me to a final story I want to share with you from last week. It's a story about our daughter, Kendall, and how insecurities can put you in a cage. If you follow me on social media, you're probably aware that our daughter graduated from USC last week, and she was given the honor of singing the national anthem at the 140th commencement ceremonies for the University of Southern California. So we were there. It was an unbelievable moment to watch our daughter sing the national anthem a cappella in front of 20,000 fellow graduates and their families. So we're talking at least 50,000 people there as she was singing. And one of the coolest things is, as she was singing the national anthem and as the song starts to build, you hear the crowd getting louder and louder. And you can also hear her just coming into the fullest, most authentic version of who she is. Just take a listen to this moment.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight and the ramparts we watch were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Ah, that moment will probably be one of those moments that flashes before my eyes on my deathbed, like a core memory. But that's not the point of the story. The point of the story is this. 24 hours after that moment, I asked her, "So Ken, what was the most surprising thing that's happened since you sang the national anthem yesterday?" And she said this: "I didn't realize that 99% of my friends have never heard me sing." I'm like, "What?" She said, "Yeah." She said, "Hearing me sing at graduation was the first time in 4 years of knowing me that they had ever heard my voice." Now, keep in mind, she is a popular music major. For 4 years, she has been performing in college. And just stop and consider that 99% of her friends over the past 4 years have never heard her sing. Why? Because of her insecurities. See, she gave a shit about what people would think about her singing. And if you look at her social media, for the last 4 years, there was only one post on her Instagram account. And that one post was of her singing. But that's it. Now, this is her deepest passion. Her standing before people and singing and sharing herself, this is the truest form of her self-expression. And yet, she put herself in a cage because of her insecurities. That's so sad. And I know you're doing it too. That in some area of your life, you are so concerned about what other people might think that you're not sharing your full self. That's what it means to put yourself in a cage. Now, here's the good news. The door to that cage, it's wide open. And it always has been. I hope this episode has inspired you to open your wings and express yourself, your full self. Because when you drop those insecurities and you stop caring so much about it and you allow yourself to just be you, you, my friend, will set yourself free.
You got to believe
But
it.
how do you believe it if all you see is evidence that you failed or that you haven't believed in yourself or that you've put everybody else first? Like, how do you create new roots?
Okay. I call this a reset. And I took a class with a woman, and we'll get back to detecting deception, hopefully. But I took a class, have her on your podcast. Her name is Andrea Quinn. Now, I'm from Boston. We say Andrea. She's from California. She says Andrea. She has a new book out. Don't ask me the name. I don't know. Have your team look it up and we can shout it out maybe. So Andrea Quinn. I took this class. She was out in LA. And she calls these moments when we fail or people knock us down good to knows. And if we can do a reset, and she just calls them good to know. Hey, Mel, I did not appreciate you getting me back focused on detecting deception when I wanted to talk about leadership. Good to know.
Good to know.
Good to know. They're just a bunch of good to knows. I spoke at an event called Camp Empowerment. It's a woman's based
event, and everyone sleeps in tents and in little cabins and stuff. And I spoke there. It's for women wanting to like do a reset. And I spoke there, and at the end, sometimes people come up and they're hugging me or crying. I make money as a motivational keynote speaker on body language and leadership and all that, sales and stuff. And there's like 42 women in line. I'm hugging them all. I spoke for 45 minutes, but I think I hugged people for 2 hours. The last woman, she had big circle glasses, black glasses, circle, right? Short, spiky hair. She had a cool vibe, I thought. She came up to me and she said, hey, Janine, you were my roommate in your last class here last year with Sarah. And I'm like, oh my God, I love Sarah. She goes, yeah, Sarah loves you too. And she goes, I wanted to stay here and to talk to you because I just don't get it. I saw you speak twice today. I don't get what you're talking about, how it's interesting to people. I don't like your personality. I just don't get what my best friend, who I've had for years, likes about you. Old Janine would have received that, taken it in, influenced my body language, how I held myself, my limited beliefs. My roots would have been destroyed because thanks to Andrea Quinn, I said to that woman, had you been there? Good to know. Anything else you want to share with me? And I walked and wiped it off. I spoke at an event called Know Your Value. Mika Brzezinski puts it together. It's a women's-based event. Before me was Sarah Jessica Parker. I'm not saying this in a braggy way. Sarah Jessica Parker, Martha Stewart, and Bobby Brown, the makeup artist. They're before me, and then I'm the like fat girl, size 22, in the back of the room, right? Coming up next,
Stop.
and I have 25 minutes, and I got my stinking thinking coming in. Boy, they didn't get a standing ovation. They didn't, people barely applauded. Like if they don't like them, like they're never gonna like me. No one even knows who I am. I'm not even famous to that level yet. And I go, Janine, pull your shoulders back. The difference between Superman and Clark Kent is a 2-inch posture difference. Clark Kent, his shoulders are pulled forward. If you we always say pull your shoulders back. That's actually wrong. You're never going to pull your shoulders back. You actually look weird, like some type of
I just pulled my shoulders back. The second you said there's a two-inch difference, I'm like, okay, shoulders back. I'm about to get interrogated. Here we go.
We've been taught wrong. Okay.
All right. What do we do?
If you pull your shoulders back, it's actually uncomfortable, and you look weird. Instead, I want you to think like Tony Stark, right? So Tony Stark has, he has this circle thing.
Oh yeah, for Iron Man.
Iron Man. He's got this circle orb that keeps him alive on his chest.
Right.
I want you to imagine you have that in the center of your chest, and a laser beam shoots out of it. If that laser beam, based on your posture, is going to hit the ground, then you're being Clark Kent. If you want to be Superman, where the wall meets the ceiling is a confident feeling. So you just want to take that laser beam and lift your chest to where the wall meets the ceiling. Okay. Relax your shoulders. Relax those. Yeah, much better. And as you're walking, you change how you are perceived. So I'm backstage. I'm in the back of the room. I was coming from the back. And I'm after Martha Stewart and Sarah Jessica Parker. And I have my stinking thinking. And you can't be negative more than 17 seconds. After 17 seconds, I give my positivity. I'm amazing. I know cool stuff. I'm going to change their life. People in here are hurting. At least one woman needs to know this, that she's amazing. And I do that. And I go, where the wall meets the ceiling is a confident feeling. And I fire a laser beam right there where that wall meets the ceiling. And I come up for my 25 minutes, and I got the only standing ovation for that conference. This girl that no one knew, coming in, size 22, 24, in the back of the room, hitting the stage. Mika Brzezinski and Joe Scarborough talk about me the next day on their show, Morning Joe. I sold a ton of online courses because of it. And all I did was notice self-awareness, notice my stinking thinking. No more than 17 seconds of negativity. Say 5 things about me that I love. I changed my posture, and I know things. I'm not here to teach you to be healthy and strong and fit. I'm here to teach you about body language and the power of influencing people and emotional intelligence and loving ourselves. And then I just killed it. I just had a mad love affair with the audience. I made it less about me and more about them. And I'm like, they need what I know. My mother always said, your power is what you give to others.
Our next question today comes from Jen. And the reason why I invited Jen on the podcast is because there was something about the way she wrote this initial question. And she had written that, like me, she too had one of the most difficult years of her life, but she was having a really hard time giving herself credit for facing all that she had been through. And I sensed there was a lot more under the surface here. So Jen, I want to welcome you to the podcast. Can you start by just introducing yourself and asking your question again?
So my name is Jen, and I am from Pennsylvania. Um, my question is, I have a lot of difficulty giving myself credit, as you suggested that we do, um, especially this past year, which has been just extraordinarily painful. How can I overcome that?
I love your question. So, why has this last year been extraordinarily painful?
Without getting into too much detail, there was some betrayal that happened in my life,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just affected every aspect of who I am. Like I question everything now, like everything I thought I was, everything I thought I could do. Like it's all just been ripped away, and
Mm-hmm.
I can't overcome it.
You can overcome it. You won't at the moment. And let me give you advice about betrayal, okay? And this is really hard to get. And as somebody who has both been betrayed and who earlier in my life was somebody who was the betrayer, I can speak to both sides of this. And what I want to say, and this is the hardest thing to grasp, it has nothing to do with you. What that person did in your life has nothing to do with you. And it has to do with their pain. It has to do with their neurochemistry. It has to do with their coping mechanisms, their trauma, their dysfunction, their pain. It doesn't make it any easier when you're on the receiving end of it. But when you say and are able to just repeat, it literally has nothing to do with me. This is a very hurt and lost person who is coping with that hurt and that loss in an incredibly destructive way. But in no way, shape, or form does their bullshit determine whether or not I'm lovable, or whether or not I trust people, or whether or not I'm good enough. They have revealed a very broken side of themselves that they have chosen to escape, numb, deflect, all of it, instead of facing it in the mirror. And it's really hard because you got to go through a process of grieving what you thought it was in order to have yourself unhook from it. Because what you're actually grieving right now, and I'm just going to, you haven't given me any details, but I'm just going to, talk from my own experience. You're grieving the future that you thought was going to happen, and you're grieving the reality of what you thought was going on. And that's incredibly destabilizing. And so you got to give yourself time, I'd say a year, to really just move through the anger, the pissed offness, the hurt, the how could they have done this? How could I not have seen this? How could they have lied? Like all of it. And then at some point, you're going to hit this like saturation point where you have soaked up so much of the misery that you will no longer want to feel it. And the only thing that will help you, like a sponge, squeeze that shit out of your being, is when you say, wow, I actually feel sorry for that person. I feel sorry that they're so screwed up that their only way to cope with that is to either cheat or lie or steal or whatever, because it's easier than facing the truth. Some people are so scared of disappointment or upset or pain that they are willing to literally drug, smoke, drink, or fuck their way through life. Because the momentary rush of dopamine that you feel when you snort cocaine or you have an orgasm or you're flirting with somebody in secret or you're stealing, that relieves you of the deep pain that you're feeling. That's why people do that. And you were hurt. You didn't deserve it. But I'll tell you what else. You don't deserve, and you shouldn't be in a relationship with somebody who is not willing to face that shit, who is not willing to heal with you, who is not willing to do the work. And so, I'm being tough with you because this person already got how many years of your life?
I'm 14.
Yes. And what I want you to understand is that, first of all, any relationship, in my opinion, if two people are willing to do the work, any relationship can come through and be stronger, even in the face of betrayal. No question. But only if both of you are willing to come to the table and do the work together. You to forgive and the other person to face their shit that led to this. And if they're not, then all you can do is grieve what wasn't and grieve the future you thought you were going to have and take a hefty amount of empathy to feel sorry for somebody, that this is who they are, as hard as it is, and at some point to truly, honestly be grateful that all this crap got revealed so that you can move forward with somebody who's healthy. And the somebody I'm referring to is you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that.
And one other thing, even though this has nothing to do with you, when you look across the 14 years, there are probably things that you can see where you let shit slide. Or you didn't say what you really meant.
So I blame myself.
Excuse me, what did you say?
So I blame myself when I look back and kind of assess all of those things. Like I do find things that I have let slide. So then I blame myself for letting it go.
No, it's just a lesson. And sometimes lessons we learn easily, and sometimes we need sledgehammers. And this is a sledgehammer. And so as you move forward in your life, whether you do so on your own or you do so, working through this with somebody, one of the things to do is not to blame yourself. It's to say, oh, I now know that I will never do X again. I will never do this again. That when I feel a certain way, I won't be silent. When I have a hunch, I won't talk myself out of it. That when I'm being disrespected, I will address it. And that's what you're learning from this. It's one of the 1,000 things that you're about to learn for this. And one other thing I want to tell you is I promise you, the road ahead, you got the best years of your life ahead of you. You do. And I think you know that.
I hope so. I want to know that. I want to think that. It's just then I get into my head and that's kind of where I live.
What's the thing that you say that tortures you the most?
That I'm not good enough. that it happened because I'm not good enough, not pretty enough, not thin enough, not all of it.
How's that feel?
It sucks.
Do you want a different story?
I do.
Great. I'm going to give you one when we come back from the break. Welcome back. I'm Mel Robbins, and today we are coaching listeners who have experienced betrayal. And unfortunately, as you're learning, this is a topic that I have a lot of experience in. And we were just talking with Jen, and I was explaining the fact that one of the most important steps that you need to take is you've got to start telling yourself a different story about what happened. And so here's one, Jen, that I want you to start telling yourself. It happened because he's an asshole who has a lot of trauma, who doesn't want to face it, and who's been avoiding it. And we also know who will likely do the same thing to the next person if he doesn't face it now. Because people who avoid the hard things, the pain they're feeling, or the trauma that they experienced when they were little, when people use avoidance as a coping mechanism, guess what they continue to do? To avoid. And again, this is where it comes down to the fact that this betrayal has nothing to do with you. And I know that's hard to grasp. I really do. But I want you to start to tell yourself the story that this has nothing to do with me. This has to do with his shit. This has to do with him not having the coping mechanism to face his pain. And this is a wake-up call. That's what this is. It has nothing to do with me.
I do want to be clear that he is trying to own his crap. It's just,
Oh.
it's me living in my head. And like, I know that part of me knows that it's not my fault, that it's not that I'm not good enough. And all of the things that you said, it's just, like I'm a highly sensitive person. I'm an empath. I'm ADHD, like all of those things. And I just, it's me trying to overcome those things for me.
Then let me give you a different interpretation and a different story. Because you two are trying to work together through this.
Yeah.
Great. And let me tell you why I think that's great. I don't know a single couple that has gone through something horrible. And look, Chris and I have gone through horrible stuff. I don't know a single couple who spends time in therapy and works through it, who doesn't come out on the other side and say, I wish I hadn't worked on it.
Right.
But I do know a number of people that have gotten divorced that wish they had tried to work through it. And so working through it matters, not so you can stay together, but it matters because if you don't stay together, you will be better co-parents and friends. And that's important. But the likelihood is if you're both willing to come to the table, and he in particular is willing to do the work, then the odds are in your favor. And you will come through this stronger. So the story I want you to tell yourself is this. What if he did this because it was the only way he could stay in the marriage? Because he was feeling so lost and so depressed and so whatever, that he was the one who didn't feel good enough. That it's not about you or the other person being thin or whatever else. That he was at a point in his life that he lost who he was. And he might as well have been having sex with a frickin' dinner plate, for crying out loud, because it's not about the other person. It's about him chasing an old version of himself. And if there's a dynamic in your relationship where he thinks he's failing or he thinks he's not good enough, that's what this is about. It's not about you not being good enough. It's about him not measuring up for you.
Yeah. I like that story a lot better.
And you know what else I like a lot better? That it was sex or an emotional connection and not heroin.
Mm. I don't know. I'd kind of prefer the heroin, I think.
Right now you would,
Yeah.
because we want to make this stuff about us. Of course it hurts you. Of course. It's devastating. And one of the biggest things you will learn from this, if you allow yourself to, is you'll learn that forgiveness only happens when you stop wishing things were different. And that you can love somebody profoundly and at the same time do shit that hurts them profoundly. And that through the act of understanding what happened and really allowing yourself to be in a space where you can hear how broken, hurt, lost, whatever, regretful, whatever the feelings are, you will truly connect with this person at a level you never have. And this is not easy. It will be worth it, regardless of what happens. And the more you tell yourself, this has nothing to do with me. This is about him being broken. It's about him not measuring up. It's about him needing to escape these feelings instead of dealing with them.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of courage on both of your parts to face this. And if you guys can get to a point where you understand what happened and you keep the lines of communication open and you keep going to therapy, you'll have a stronger marriage than 99% of the people out there.
Yeah. I keep hearing that. That's what I'm holding on to.
Yeah, you're on the bridge. I love using this metaphor that all change is a bridge. And this happens to be one that's about as long as the Chesapeake Bay Bridge.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a suspension bridge, which means when the winds pick up, it blows. And it will get better. And it will get in the rearview mirror. And by going to therapy together, whether you stay together or it ends up not being what you want, you will have such a better understanding of yourself and an understanding of what happened that you won't carry the resentment and the self-blame, because it's not about you. It has nothing to do with you. In fact, in the best of all scenarios, what you're going to learn is that when somebody feels inadequate or that they've failed you, it has more to do with how much they love you. As screwed up as that sounds. Ask your therapist.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I will.
I don't know the details of what happened, but I
Yeah.
just am trying to tell you that if he didn't love you, he would have left.
Right.
And affairs are people searching for parts of themselves that they feel they've lost. That's what they are.
Thank you.
And they're not fair and they're not right. And you didn't deserve this. And he's very fucking lucky that you didn't just end it. Because you both have a chance to grow from this. And that's a gift. Even though it doesn't fucking feel like one you want to unwrap.
Yeah.
You're on the bridge. Just keep crossing the bridge. And trust that when you get to the other side, it's going to be way better than you can imagine.
I hope so. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're going to be okay. Just let yourself feel this shit, dude. Like, that's what you got to do. And the thing that I also want to tell you is, like, when you get pissed, like, write it all out. Like you're probably past the lashing out part and screaming, but maybe not. I don't know.
For the
But
most part, yeah.
yeah, like it just allow yourself to be a little human. And now that you're kind of through that part, keep steering yourself toward, okay, how do I understand what happened? How do I create a space for healing for both of us? How do I forgive what happened? Like that's the North Star. Because whether you stay together, especially if you stay together, but even if it ends, I don't want you to carry this resentment or this lack of trust into what happens next. Heal this for yourself. And if the marriage is the right thing for you, you'll know.
Yes.
Thank you for being so honest with us and vulnerable.
Thank you very, very much. Thank you. You have no idea how much you have just helped me change my life. So thank you.
You're welcome. And you're continuing to do it. And, you know, I think sometimes too, this is happening because you're not supposed to have that kind of shit going on in your life. That as you level up your own standards for yourself, what's amazing is all of the crap that's not working comes to the surface. And that's because you're not supposed to have a life that's out of integrity. That's not what you want. That's not what you stand for. And sometimes bringing things into integrity means a lot of shit comes to the surface and you got to get a shovel.
Yeah.
You are going to be just fine. You're not only going to be fine, you're going to be happy. And you're going to be stronger because of this. And you're going to have a deeper capacity for love. And you are going to surprise yourself.
Yeah. Oh, I have. I already have for sure.
Name one thing that has surprised you about yourself or that you're proud of, because I want somebody that's at the beginning of this kind of breakdown to hear somebody further across the bridge.
I am very surprised. I had no idea how strong I really am. And you hear that all the time. You know, you don't know how strong you are until it's time to be strong. So honestly, if there is anybody, just believe in yourself. You're stronger than you think. You absolutely are.
Yeah. Is there anything else that surprised you as you've navigated this?
Honestly, my ability to kind of try to be compassionate. Like I've always been, you know, of the mindset, you know, I won't stay in a relationship where there was infidelity. It's just it's not how I'm going to work. And then you're in the situation and it's completely different than anything you thought it would be.
Yeah.
But just to be able to overcome it, I mean, get like I know I already said this, but like just the being, I'm so much stronger than I thought. And that's how I get through my days. And like I grace, grit, gratitude. I say that to myself all day long, just learning to show myself grace, finding things to be grateful for, and keeping my head down and just keep going. Go to the therapy, do the hard work.
Yeah.
All of the things. Grace, grit, and gratitude.
You're crossing the bridge in the fog in a rainstorm.
Yep.
And here's what I also want you to be proud of. You are compassionate because you have a very deep capacity to love.
Yeah.
And part of loving is also being able to accept and understand someone else. Now, that doesn't mean condone.
Right.
That doesn't mean you're responsible for it. That doesn't mean that you're making excuses for it. But attempting to understand somebody else's pain and bringing compassion to something that somebody is dealing with, even though their dysfunction profoundly broke your heart, that's an act of love. That's why you're going to be okay. Today, we are talking about how you can protect yourself from other people's bad moods, how you deal with annoying coworkers, and boy, oh boy, do we have a juicy question at the end of this conversation today from Celeste about gossip. You are gonna just love her question. And I'm so excited because, we all have stories about dealing with people who are like energy suckers, and I am bringing some stories today. But I want to make sure that you leave with some tools. And so I not only got some of the fun stories you're going to relate to from my own life, but I've got really visual metaphors and tools that are simple to remember. They're sticky. You can teach them to anybody. And so 1, you're going to learn how to put up an energetic force field. 2, we're going to talk about strategies for how you protect yourself from other people's baloney. And 3, I'm going to teach you how to keep yourself in a positive mood. Because that means no matter what's going on around you, you can be a force for good. And you can protect your own energy, even when people are testing your patience or trying to suck your energy dry. So let's jump right in with a question from a listener named Veronica.
Hi, Mel. It's Veronica. In the workplace, and I'm sure in other spaces too, I find that there are some people who, whether they are conscious of it or not, project their panic and anger in emails and communications, which more often than not turns my fine day into panic and anger as well. They are people who kind of bring the house down with them. How can you hear what they are saying and not be emotionally affected by it? Thank you.
Veronica, that example of the emails, like when you get a text in all caps, or you get one of those emails where you can hear the edge in somebody's voice, and you're just like, why are you doing verbal diarrhea at me right now through this email? Because you would not speak to me this way. And I have this story. So I was in Los Angeles last week, and we were checking in at the front desk, and this woman comes like huffing and puffing from the elevators, okay? And she's doing that kind of walk where people are they're like really hustling and shuffling on the floor, and their elbows are really pointy, like they're trying to pump their arms to make them walk even faster and with more authority. And she had this high pony, and it was swinging in the air. And she had a really fancy like piece of luggage she was dragging, and a duffel bag. And then there was this woman behind her, kind of huffing and puffing behind her too. And they walk right up next to us at the front desk, and she kind of slams her hands on the table as Chris and I are in the middle of talking to the woman who's checking us in. Now, keep in mind, the woman who's checking us in, it's probably 9:15 at night in Los Angeles. She looks like she's probably 24. And I assume, given that I have a 24-year-old daughter and I have a 22-year-old daughter, that she is probably a recent college grad who has majored in hospitality. And now she is in a 2-year intern program where she is working in a hotel in a city she doesn't live in. And she's got that kind of big blazer on that doesn't fit quite right. And you can tell that she's exhausted. And so I got this huffy, puffy, annoying woman next to me who is clearly entitled. And she's angry. What is she angry about? Oh, well, the doors to her balcony, they don't close all the way. I didn't even know there were balconies on the rooms in this hotel. I mean, I'm not in that kind of room. So she starts like venting at this woman, venting at this 24-year-old woman in a hospitality internship program who does not have the authority to do anything, who is clearly exhausted, and who, by the way, is not responsible for the door to your balcony not working. And so why are you just vomiting on this poor gal? And you could see the life force just drain out of this woman who was standing at the front desk. And she apologized. She said she would get the manager who wasn't in and would be in the morning. And then the woman huffed and she puffed. Well, what are you going to do about it now? I can't stand it. Like, I can't stand people like this. There is no reason not to be kind to other people. There is no reason not to ask for help in a polite manner, because the people that you're asking for help from almost never are responsible for the thing that's not working. And the person that's emailing you at work, who's all frustrated because of the Q4 numbers and the boo, 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 and the client this and the do, 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 do. Like, you're not responsible for the stuff that's stressing them out. And so here's what I did in that moment, because a couple things happened in that story. Number one, that woman's bitchy behavior and entitlement, it's like contagious. And when somebody's yelling at you, whether it's an email or you're separated by the front desk at the hotel that you're working at, it's still like gets all over you. I think about the visual almost like if you've ever walked your dog and they jump into like muddy water, or they roll in the mud, or heaven forbid you're walking on the beach and there's a big, nasty, rotting fish on the beach and your dog runs right up to it before you can get to the dog. And now your dog is rolling all in it and it's like, "Wah!" And then they run over to you. And what does a wet, dirty dog always do when that dog gets up to you? They shake. And when they shake, all of that negative, nasty, muddy fish, blah, 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 it just hits you. And when somebody is in a positive or a nasty mood, it's like a muddy dog shaking. And that energy gets all over you. And so it's critical in these moments that you protect your energy. And for me, I normally speak up when I see this kind of thing, because normally I have really great energy. And I'm not going to let somebody get away with that. But the truth is, I was really tired. I had just flown across country and we were in town to do something that was weighing on my mind. And I just didn't want to get into a fight with somebody who clearly had an axe to grind with absolutely anybody. And I'm not going to change this person anyway. And so what I do in those moments, when I start seeing that muddy dog shake or that high ponytail start flapping her mouth and being rude, is number one, I take a deep breath. That's it. I just take a deep breath. And there's a breath technique that you can use called 4-7-8. I don't remember who came up with this. I'm sure some will put it in the show notes. But you breathe in for 4 seconds, hold it for 7, then out for 8. And I read somewhere that the 8 part is the most important, because when you breathe out for longer than you breathed in, it sends a signal to your nervous system that it's okay to relax. And the 4-7-8 breathing technique will start the relaxation response in your body. And so if you get that all cap text from a friend, or you get that really rude email from a colleague, or you're standing somewhere in public and some jerk is annihilating the person and you just don't have the energy to go, hey, you don't have to be rude about it. Do the 4-7-8 breathing technique to signal the relaxation response in your body to protect your energy. I have a second tactic that I love. Oh my gosh, I love this. Here's the visual. I use this all the time. In fact, I just used this in a different situation last night. I call it the snow globe. So have you ever had a snow globe as a kid? It's that glass ball, and in it, they have these typically around the holidays, or if you go to like a museum or a gift store at a theme park, they tend to sell them there. I don't know why, but it's this glass ball, and in it is usually some sort of scene. So imagine a holiday tree, some reindeer, something like that comes to mind. Or You could think about the palace. What's that? Cinderella's palace at Disney. They probably have snow globes with Cinderella's palace at Disney, right? What happens when you pick up a snow globe and you shake it? All of that crap in it starts flying around. You know what that crap is? It's like that wet dog mud. Think about a snow globe. The next time you are around anybody who gives you attitude. Because when you picture the person like the chick with the high ponytail, trapped in her own little snow globe, and there she is bitching and barking about something and spewing her negative energy everywhere. But if you think and picture her having her tantrum in a snow globe, let me out of here, wah, wah, wah. And all of that sparkly stuff is what gets shaken up and all the negative energy. If you visualize her inside the snow globe, you can laugh at her and it doesn't get on you. So I use this even like a couple days ago. I was at a coffee shop and again at another airport, and we were standing in line and we ordered coffee and they were super, super busy and it was taking a long time. And I looked at the watch. We had 20 minutes before the flight was going to leave. And Chris was getting testy with me because he's the kind of person, my husband, that we have the opposite travel languages. So I have my travel language is be the last person on the plane. Get to the gate as late as possible without missing the plane. Spend as little time in the airport as possible. Chris, on the other hand, he basically likes to stroll through an airport. He likes to sit at the gate for a while and get comfortable and read his book and enjoy his coffee. He loves getting there early. And so we have the exact opposite travel language. He has agreed to stand in this long line with me to get a cup of coffee. He's starting to get agitated, not quite snow globe agitated, but you can tell he's getting nervous and his coffee comes out. And so I say, why don't you take it and go and hold the plane for me? I'll be right there. So he leaves. And now it's taking a minute and another minute and another minute. And I start to realize, holy cow, I'm going to miss this plane. I start to realize, holy cow, I actually need to leave. And so I go to the counter and I say to the woman they are really busy. I mean, you can tell she's stressed. And I'm not like the lady with the ponytail. I just lean forward and say, hey, is the drink for Mel about to be done? Because otherwise I'm going to just have to, say, give it to somebody. And she, like she had a tantrum. I'm doing the best I can. She erupted. See, when somebody throws a tantrum, here's what I know. What I know is they're having trouble tolerating all the negative emotion that they're feeling. This woman behind the counter is feeling a ton of pressure. She's behind. She's frustrated. I'm sure other people have been rude to her. And my question to her, it was the straw that broke the camel's back. She just couldn't handle the negativity and the stress anymore in her body. And so she had a tantrum. She exploded at me. Whatever. She's allowed to have a tantrum. It's a stressful job. I get it. And because I can picture her inside her own little snow globe, having her own little tantrum, all the sparkly stuff flying all around her, that's her negative energy. It stays inside the snow globe. I said, no problem, totally understand. And I left and went to my plane. And you know what? I didn't let it bother me. And that's the beauty of these strategies. See, there are always going to be people and situations in life that are triggering. The world is full of jerks and people who cannot tolerate their own emotional experience. And when you do the 4-7-8 breath to trigger a relaxation response inside yourself, you take control. When you visualize whomever it is, whether it's the colleague sitting behind their desk and they're stomping on their keyboard, having their own little tantrum in their little cubicle, inside their little snow globe, you protect yourself. And that way, these emotional vampires that are out there in the world and these emotional vampire-y type situations that drain you and your energy, they don't impact you. And this is so important because when you look at the research around human connection, our brains are programmed to connect with other human beings. That's how we're wired. It's part of our biology, our physiology. In fact, we seek out connection. We want meaningful bonds because when we do that, it not only feels good, but your brain releases oxytocin, which is a wonderful feel-good chemical in your brain. It rewards that kind of thing. And if we feel disconnected, we feel unsafe. And in fact, if we're around somebody else who's stressful or weird or hostile, like the chick with the ponytail, do you know what happens? Your brain releases yet another chemical. This one's called cortisol. And cortisol is the stress hormone. And so you immediately not only sense that something's off with this person, but you also have this chemical physiological response. I think that's why we often, label people's behavior as toxic or icky or gross, because it feels that way to you, just like a dog that is shaking and gets their mud all over you. And I think we know common sense wise that people's moods and energy are contagious, but there's a new study by scientists at Oxford and Birmingham universities that show that bad moods, they're not only contagious, they're more infectious than good moods. And on top of all of this, your brain has something called mirror neurons. Mirror neurons are amazing because what they do is in nanoseconds, they can process and register any human being's facial expression, body language, tone of voice. It's absolutely unbelievable. And what ends up happening is your mirror neurons make you start to mirror the same emotions as the people around you. This is why when you're watching a movie and that sort of sappy music comes on, or somebody in the movie starts to cry, your mirror neurons are what are triggering you to start welling up too. And they also work for the positive. If you look at somebody eye to eye and you hold eye contact and you flash a huge toothy smile, it takes less than 5 seconds for the mirror neurons and the person who you are looking at and smiling at to kick in, and that person will not be able to help themselves but smile back. And this is important for you to know because it works both for the good, you can catch really good energy, and when it comes to bad energy, that's easier to catch. Hey, it's Mel. Thank you so much for checking this video out. And if you like this one, I have a feeling you're going to like this one too. I'll see you there.